Welcome to Ops Up Inside Your Head, the conversation for ops leaders that, there you go, failed the first time round. Try again. Welcome to Ops Up Inside Your Head. This is the conversation for ops leaders that want to make their businesses amazing. We talk to brilliant people from the world of operations that have been there, done that, built the habit. Today, we're joined by the brilliant Avneet. He had three things in mind. One, he's an entrepreneur by nature. Two, he's passionate about scaling businesses. And finally, he loves all things ops. Welcome, Avneet. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks, Michael. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. The sun is shining and I'm ready for a brilliant conversation. So let's kick things off. Can you give us a bit of an intro to who you are and a little bit about where you've previously worked?
Yeah, sure. So look, I've got 20 years experience across startups, scale-ups and corporates. I've worked at some big notable firms, the likes of EY. I've also worked in tech for sort of 20 years at smaller software houses, the likes of Northdoor. I most recently spent 8 years at Just Eat. So grew it from what was quite a small entrepreneurial business to a really big global group. Lots of different roles there. So yeah, just keen to sort of chat through my experience and yeah, looking forward to the conversation.
Brilliant. And I can imagine that 8 years at Just Eat, there were some really interesting operational changes and decisions to make. So I'm looking forward to hearing about what you've seen in the world and actually how that affects what you think now. Now, this next one's a very brief one. The world of operations and the path to operations can be quite squiggly. Can you give me your jobs from about 18 to now, the job titles that you had?
Yeah, sure. There's quite a few actually. So left uni, outbound sales advisor for HSBC, then was a branch manager for NatWest. So lots of sort of core customer services and operational sales experience. Then worked as a management consultant for Software Stereo for 3 years. I worked after that at EY for a year as an associate consultant. Quality assurance in insurance, so more on the tech side, but operational processes. Business process designer for Thomson Reuters. Head of software delivery for a small software house, lead consultant for another software house, program manager, head of delivery, so software delivery, global head of software delivery, head of change management, head of program management, now independent consultant. So here we are.
Yeah, well, that's really interesting because you've wiggled a lot across lots of different disciplines. Because quite often you'll find people like just come in through a customer service door or a finance door, but you seem to have hit them all. Like being done some front-facing stuff, some back-end things, bit of technology in there as well. So a really rounded experience.
Yeah, it's been really interesting, right? Like, so particularly my last role was almost like a culmination of all the years of experience. So working, as you say, with finance, HR, legal, marketing, sales, like every function in the mature business. So it was an amazing experience. I got to work with the board of the company as well as with more of the sort of senior leaders, right down to the operational people. So yeah, very, very cross-functional profile, lots of rich experiences. And yeah, I wouldn't have changed it for a well.
Nice. I love it. Right. So with that in mind, what does being an ops leader mean to you?
So I think there's like 3 core nuts and bolts, right? So I'd probably start with it's being a leader rather than actually being an ops leader, right? So just putting yourself in the shoes of what the business wants to achieve and what its customers want to feel, right? And how they're being treated. So that in itself, from my response, right, probably starts to tell you that I'm passionate about both the strategic element of like, what are you trying to achieve as a business? And then more looking at how you achieve it. So it's the what, the how, and then work with people to drive the why. So that's always been the way I've tended to work, right? So I look at sort of strategy, the people, the process, and then the technology element that underpins a business. So hopefully that helps give you a bit of background on my stuff.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting that you're talking about the strategy there as well, because we've had
Yes.
some people who work in a bit smaller organizations, and they're still very much, the strategy is there a little bit, but they're still very much on the fundamental getting the process to run smoothly, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but I can imagine actually at that huge scale that Just Eat is, that it's actually, that strategy has to be in place and people have to understand it, because you have so many independent parts of a business. You need to align those.
Yeah, absolutely right. Like it's a two-pronged approach. It also depends on what level you're working at in the organization. So I mentioned in the intro, right, like I started as a program manager in technology, and that brief was very different. It was around, hey, we've got these 4 agile teams. Can you point them in the same direction and get them speaking to stakeholders about their roadmaps and really start to build some level of uniformity around delivery? Now that's fine because it's a very function-led sort of purpose. Whereas, as you say, when you get bigger, you have that element of what is the global strategy? How does that break down into the sales strategy and the marketing strategy, et cetera, et cetera. And I think it doesn't really matter what scale you're at. If you've got an idea of what you want to do in a business, like that has always been my approach, whether I've been a consultant or in-house. Like I've partnered with COOs of small businesses. I worked with Medivet many, many years ago. And the first question I asked the COO was, what are your business pains? What is it that you want to achieve, right? Like, forget me being the consultant. Actually, I need to understand what your business needs now and what your business needs 12 months from now, what it needs 18 months from now. It might not be written down. Let's just start with that. So,
yeah. Nice. And that very much frame of what do you need, especially when you're partnering with someone, means that you're not coming in and doing your party trick, because everyone has a party trick, right? Everyone has 2 or 3 things they're very good at that will do something and move a needle. But the most powerful question you can ask is, what do you need? And then getting them to explain it, because quite often, one of the things, I don't know if you found, when I talk to people, they don't actually know what they need. They know what their problem is. And they're very much, they've got it. And the thing they think they need quite often isn't it. There's something else that you can reflect back to them.
Yeah, that's a really powerful statement, right? Like they think they know what they need, but has it been validated? Has it been tested? Is that really what they want? And those are the sorts of questions you start sort of uncovering when you just go, tell me where you want to be in 18 months. Because I've been in situations in more traditional businesses, I'm also ex-insurance, where you get given a book, right? And you go and deliver this book. But it's like, actually, no, I can deliver the book. There's no problem. But really what I want to understand is what you want to achieve. And then we can get to whether the book needs to be half the size or bigger or whatever it is. Yeah. So.
Cool. Okay. Got it. So if that's how you think about the world, this next bit's about you.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about how you show up. What's your routine to stay fresh and be ready to be the best version of you can in a day?
So I think the biggest thing is routine, right? So like I've got 2 young children. It's really important that I'm up with them to get them ready for school. In my 20s, I wasn't a morning person. These days I am, having children, making sure I've got like fresh air in my lungs, having a sense of purpose. They're all really important. I think also what I realized is balance is particularly key for me, right? So I tend to do well when I'm working on a topic or a set of topics for a couple of hours, very immersed, and then drop off. So those breaks are very important. From a personal perspective as well, having a bit of work-life balance. So I play football in the evenings. I go to the gym. I've got like a badminton group. So real immersion of sort of work-life integration. I don't even use the term work-life balance, but real work-life integration.
Yeah. And I think it is that finding that flow, isn't it? Of like, when are you at your best? And it's interesting, you've got a 2-3 hour like that bubble of productivity, and then you come out of it, and then can you get yourself back up for another one? That's always the challenge, isn't it? Is that, can you do 2 in a day? Because sometimes if it's one a day, what that feels like.
Well, I mean, the thing with me, particularly in large tech businesses, right? Like I often ended up with 3 in a day, and that was too many. I can definitely do 2, but there needs to be some space in between. And I now know that if I'm doing 3, that's not sustainable for long periods of time. So that's also like a really big realization of, as you sort of go through the learning curve of your own style and your own levels of intensity, what will work and what won't work.
Yeah, nice. Okay, so if that's how you get yourself ready, what's your go-to way to prioritize the day? How do you make sure that you're focusing on the right tasks?
That's a really great question, right? Like, so I'm a list person, so I'm very like logic and very logically orientated. So end of every day, I'll say sort of like do a wrap up of, hey, what do I need to do tomorrow? What do I need to achieve this week? When do I need to do it? So I'm a planner by nature, right? So very much like block out portions of the week for X, Y, and Z activity. It might not be in a diary, but it will definitely be like my phone is my friend in that respect. Of making sure I know like I've got a predictable week laid out. That's when I'm the least happy is when I haven't built some sort of operating rhythm either for myself or the business that I'm working with or for.
Yeah. No. And tell me a bit more about that rhythm, because I companies I see that are struggling have lots of people working in different rhythms. So
yeah,
what does rhythm mean to you?
So it's about, as I sort of said at the beginning, right? Like it's about pulling in the same direction and having a sense of achievement that's bounded to some sort of time. So that doesn't mean I'm like strict on structure, right? Like I don't really mind if you're a Scrum team or an Agile team. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about here is how do you assess progress and what does that look like? Does that look like a week for a startup? Does that look like a month? Corporate, does it look like a quarter? Then you sort of flow off how your teams and your structures and your processes look at the end of that, right? Like, and just having that agreement of, here's my line in the sand, right? I'm a startup. I think we can achieve great things within 2 weeks versus a corporate, which may be quarter. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's about being clear what you think is an acceptable moment to take a sense of like how much of the pie you've actually either eaten or carved. So, yeah.
Nice. Okay, cool. I like that. I might come back to that in a bit when we start talking about teams and businesses.
Yeah.
Like, and then we'll talk about. Okay, so come back to the world of you. What's your go-to productivity app? What's the thing that you can't live without that keeps you on target?
That's a really good question. I don't have a productivity app. I task myself with being productive, and that means different things at different times, Michael. So right, like, so I use the Pomodoro technique. I tend to break down tasks into sort of small bites. My personal preference is to look at my achievements over. I like quarters, so I like to break things into quarters. So what did you achieve in quarters? And maybe it's my age, right? Like, as I said, I really like just the agility of being able to look back at that quarter. I have a life coach, so she's not an app; she's a real person, which is great. So, but yeah, I work with a life coach, and I sort of go and speak to her once every quarter. I'm now trying to move that to once every month because I think once every quarter, particularly in the sort of direction I'm heading with wanting to do more fractional and interim work, it is going to be more targeted and faster than the corporate work that I'm used to. She lets me take stock of different elements of all of my life, both professional achievements, personal achievements, entrepreneurial achievements, all of
them. Nice. And I think it's not an app, but you've hit something like quite nicely there. So I've had lots of conversations this week with encouraging people that I'm working with to grow their network and grow the people they can talk to about what they're doing. It's quite easy to get lost in the world of telling your phone everything, but that's not a person that doesn't actually bring things to life. So I love that you've got a coach people being in that space myself, but it shows it's important that as a consultant that you still need someone to talk to, right? So it doesn't just stop at you. There's that you aren't the end part of at the trail of thought. Love it.
Yeah, and I also think, right, like you sort of hit a really important point there around like your network. So when I went through this process of, I spent 20 years primarily in like permanent roles, now wanting to do fractional and interim work, is a very different mindset and model. So you have to have a set of people around you that understand what you're going through and are able to support that. And like you say, like what I find is, particularly with a coach, I get a richness of feedback of both validating feelings and emotions, and also talking about keeping me accountable for both my actions on the small scale, but also on the larger scale. So that is very powerful, and I've seen my network change. It's a very different network profile of people that I'm speaking to that have got more of that sort of openness to freelance, being more, being less structured, but more creative.
Yeah, no, and we could have a whole conversation around that power of network and that changing people up. And it's not that people are the wrong people; they're not interested in the same thing anymore. They might have limiting thoughts that they apply to you that they think are protecting you, but actually they don't serve you. And there's a whole rabbit hole we can go down there. But that's quite interesting, because actually my next question was going to be, so what habit are you currently thinking about? So in terms of what are you thinking about creating in this new version of yourself?
Yeah, so I think authenticity is the main thing. So I really thrive in entrepreneurial environments, right? Like, one of or two of the sort of main components actually came out for me when I look back at my sort of corporate career, particularly, is the dynamics of a boardroom are challenging. People have strong opinions, and often I found myself not challenging enough in difficult situations, and I sort of started to unpick that a little bit. And it's structural, right? Like, I'm Asian by background, so often we're taught through sort of society not to challenge but to fit in, and actually that's not what I want or actually need at this point in my career. What I need to be able to do is help shape, help challenge, help help a business actually look at their performance and their ways of working in a different lens, and you can't do that if you're trying to fit in. So.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Like that, because it's about the habit of how you reply and what you've been taught and where you've come from.
Yeah,
and sometimes it's the trauma that you've had in previous roles, right? You've tried to speak up and you get shot down, and you're like, well, I'm not doing that again, and you don't even realize that you're doing things to protect yourself. I love that you've spotted that. So that's what you're trying to create. What habit are you needing to retire?
So one is people pleasing. So that's definitely gone. I'm very vocal. Sometimes to my detriment, but I'm very vocal. And second, I think, is probably a couple habits, right? Like, and two is, as I mentioned earlier, right? Like, this piece around discipline of keeping a tab on what tops up my cup. So in my case, it's my kids, it's my it's the exercise, it's spending time with my wife. In the highly sort of pressure world of corporate, I lost a few of those mechanisms, where I didn't give them enough attention. And I definitely am aware that wherever I go next, like particularly with the fractional and interim work, I will have periods and bursts of energy where I can really deliver intently, but also give that same intensity to my family and my friends and my sport, and the other top of my cup factors. So.
Yeah, and that's really powerful, because like your friends and your family are ultimately the ones that are there with you for the long journey.
Yeah.
and actually sometimes shorting them with your time and your attention. It's a bit easier when you've got no sort of close, you haven't started your own family in that journey, but when that family thing happens, you're like, oh, I can't really, like, I know I need to be there for that play, that pickup, and actually how you can't trade it off. And yeah, it's a really interesting balance, what you say. And you can choose how you fill your cup up now. It's not preordained by another person in the business somewhere how you're going to feel happy and more recharged. It's like, no, my terms, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I also, so we mentioned at the beginning, entrepreneur by nature, right? Like I've also got pursuits outside of like core employment-led activity. So I've invested in property over the years. I've invested in knowledge in M&A, and there is a sort of sense of all of my life coming together, right? Like I do everything from sort of managing tenants in my properties through to talking to fellow entrepreneurs about how they've built their business and whether they may want to buy or sell. I've recently opened a food business with my wife as well, so I've got that real entrepreneurial hat of like, hey, I've been out there, harking back to the real infancy of my career. I've been on a food van, like doing customer services and sales. So like the dynamism and richness of like the experience now really coming to the fore. It was quite an interesting summer, actually. It wasn't planned, but we ended up launching a food business, which was amazing. So.
Yeah, and actually that's going to require some real boundaries for you, and because there'll be moments where you're going to be expected to turn up for these organizations where you're doing this fractional work, where you have to turn up for your business, but also your family, and actually making sure that you can be everywhere. So does that mean there's going to be a few more no's this year as well to other things?
Yeah, there already has been. So we've done some like redesign personally at home. So some simple things we've sort of redesigned. So to give the kids the chance to see us at work whenever we take the food van out. They now no longer go to classes on the Saturday or Sunday. There are like midweek classes. We're opening the cafe. The cafe is going to be 10 to 2. Look, if you're going to try and maximize profit, you might want to do a takeaway as well. But no, we've actually gone with 10 to 2 because that's school-based hours, meaning that you actually get to see the kids. And like you say, like I'm looking at the moment for 1 to 2 fractional clients. And that's precisely why I'm looking for 1 to 2 fractional clients, because I believe I can deliver value in 4 days. Any more than 4 days is too much. So there is a lot of no's. I've actually already started to prep my life more around having that flexibility. But obviously, it's built on 20 years of me hopefully smartly investing anyway. So
yeah.
Cool.
Okay. Really interesting. So let's go into a bit more about the teams and like those smaller, not organizations, but smaller groups of people that you end up working with across businesses.
Yeah.
What do you see like as the future of sort of good teams and the habits that people need to start thinking about?
So I think like if I hark back, I've got a couple really interesting experiences. So when I was head of project management at a software house, it was a Spanish consultancy, really, really new company to the UK. Very, very dedicated team. We ran a really stressful project for a year, building newsletters for a global media company. I won't say who they are, but what I realized from that experience was we had great people around the table, but we picked the wrong tooling, and it was a very, very sales-driven process. So the first thing I sort of say, right, is like map out your purpose, map out what it is you want to achieve, and then take the time to understand what the best route is. Now, that might be working with someone like me as a consultant. It may be working with someone in-house who understands your business and is already very embedded. But take the time to build a strategy and roadmaps for success. And though that includes culture, I go back to people, right, which were great at that software house. Process, which was very difficult because it was bolted under multiple we had multiple vendors in there working with us, and the technology was difficult. But look at every component of how you're going to execute something before you launch, right? Like startups particularly are great at like, let's go, that's a great idea, let's execute. Well, why is MVP actually there, right? MVP is there to avoid exactly what I've just described, which is, so I think that's probably part one, right? Like the future of teams is being, I think it's pizza sized. I think, what you're seeing in the economy in general is like, you need smaller teams, nimble teams, with like these sorts of working models, right? With fractional working models, with some level of embedded leadership as well. And then I think it's also being purposeful. So where I've seen organizations do really well, regardless of size, is when they're pulling in the same direction. When what I found often happens as they get bigger is there's a lack of a plan as they're scaling really, really fast. And then your one function is pointing that way, one function is pointing that way, and then you're sort of having to lasso them back round to get them to point in the same direction. So.
Yeah, nice. Okay. And what sort of skills do you think those leaders are going to need? What would you like to see in those people coming into those organizations?
Yeah, so I've worked in a combination of sort of business-led organizations, tech-led organizations, and there is definitely a difference of profile. So, like in the traditional, sort of more legacy organizations, you tend to find more autocratic leaders. I think there is a place for clarity, but I think collaboration is very important, and I think that's the working style change I've seen over the last 15 years. Is there's more of a collaborative way of working, right? Like I've got all the classic technology background of project management, like Prince, P3O, Agile, and there's nothing wrong or right with any of those. But I think the main point is being able to use your EQ to understand what it is you want to implement and why, right? So I think EQ, collaboration, being pragmatic, ensuring that you have a people-focused lens. But yeah, look, it's business, right? Sometimes you have to make tough decisions. It goes without saying. But I think those core skills of being able to make tough decisions, but being able to tell a story and the why is really, really important. So.
Yeah, so that's a real blend, isn't it? That's not that one thing or another. That is making sure that you've got someone that can come in and do the competent work, but also manage the people. Because I think being able to, if you're doing the pizza model, bringing in the right slice at the right time, you need to be able to engage, get those people on board quite quickly, and keep them focused and keep them motivated, because it can be quite, especially if it's very transactional, as in you got me for 3 days, use me for 3 days. You can sometimes lose some of that care that you may get from those long-term relationships. So actually, how do you get people to really buy into those conversations?
Yeah, and I think it's also important, right, Michael, that the leaders that come in are clear and can communicate clearly, right? Like I've often found myself drawing out KPIs on a board with, say, someone on the business side of operations, and going, "Hey, what is it you want to achieve?" And they're like, "I want to achieve X," right? So these are the levers that we can pull to measure, and often they're very business-centric levers like CSAT or reduction in cost or increase in revenue. But the happiest workplaces are the ones where you have clarity of purpose in the roles that people are doing and the clarity of culture alongside a yardstick for value, right? Like that's very important. And the yardstick for value may be we operate like this, or you know, in your role, you're outstripping at X. But it's important to sort of for leaders to be able to frame that for the teams to really inspire them and get them to buy into their style of leadership.
Nice, cool, good. And that segues. You were talking earlier about what point are leaders looking at, and it depends on where you are within the organization.
Yeah.
And I like the way I talk to people about it, is it's about the horizon you're looking at. Is how far up that road are you looking? Are you looking at that first mile, the 10th mile, the 100th mile?
Yeah.
You will see a different level of detail, right? If you're looking solely at that mile in front of you, you'll see every tree, every house, every car, every person crossing the road. Whereas you're looking 100 miles down the road, it's a very different picture, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely right. And there should be an acceptance that the further you get out, the fuzzier it is. But if I've worked with product teams that are looking at, the deliverables for the next quarter, and then you classically go into Scrum and Agile, and it's like I'm breaking it down by feature for the week, and the delivery of X and Y is going to come in 2 weeks. I've also worked with strategy teams where you're doing blue sky thinking for like the next 5 years, and you've just got like one really nice PowerPoint presentation trying to encompass a really massive company. So, yeah. But I think the sort of what I learned from my days, especially partnering with product people, was I really like the North Star vision, right? Like where is it you want to get to, and then what hangs off it. And then you can break it into chunks of delivery. That's absolutely fine. But that inspired me, and I worked at, as I said, just it was a very product-led business for many years, and that sense of having a North Star never disappeared during my time.
No. So what was the North Star then? Just Eat, what was the one thing that was like, what was the one thing you were working on?
I'd love to give you an answer, but it changed so much during my time there. Like it wasn't just one thing. I mean, Just Eat had multiple different goals at different times. So the goal has always been to be sort of marketplace leader in food delivery. But that was, marketplace, when you talk about marketplace, it basically was independent restaurants, then it became chains, then it became let's grow through M&A, and then it's become a really big global delivery powerhouse, right? So I think it's changed over the years, but it was always clear there was a direction, and like you say, like that direction was fuzzy, right? Like when you start to go to the 5 years, but particularly like the 2 weeks, the quarter, even up to the year, it started to become clearer. It was always, and it's not just Eat. Like I've helped scale the likes of Medivet as well, as mentioned, who then exited to a PE company a few years ago. It's having clarity, as I go back to, right, on the what and the how. So those things are important, and it's important to recognize the difference, right? Like of what you want to achieve, and then how you're going to break that down. That's not method, but again, I'll go back to like strategy and process technology.
Cool. So does some of that movement of that North Star come from, you've got halfway there, but then there's a new North Star further beyond it? So actually it's got you there, and that being able to put down that goal and go, right, it served us to this point. However, now we need to go further and faster and go beyond where we were aiming.
Yeah, absolutely right. Like I think the reassessment of that North Star should be happening periodically and regularly as well, right? So like that may be every quarter. It may seem soon for a larger business, but at least every 6 months, right? Like you should be looking at product strategy refresh or business strategy refresh, absolutely, and like what that North Star is going to be, whether there's new KPIs, whether there's new goals that hang underneath that, and then what are the key results that hang off the back of that, and then how you actually structure your business. Absolutely, I think it's so important because the businesses I've worked in have all been quite dynamic, particularly in the last 11, 12 years. They've been really dynamic. And what you found is outside of Just Eat and some of the other players, the North Star wasn't written down, it was in someone's head. And so we talked about this earlier, right? Like this concept of someone thinks they know what they want, but when they start to write it down, it's not quite what they want, right? So it's about unpacking that and bringing it's almost like you're rebuilding a skeleton, right? You bring the bones, putting them up together to make sure it actually fits. Or the other analogy is like putting wheels on a moving car. You have to be quite careful how you do that. So, yeah.
But it is, until you say things into the world, sometimes you don't have that clarity. Almost right at the start, you were talking about when you talk to those clients, those partners, saying, "What do you want?" And they say it, and then the thing you want isn't the thing you actually want, or you haven't defined it enough. So you need to redefine and really make sure that you've put it together as you want. Like you're saying, put that body back together.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? Like every organization has its place. But I mean, I remember when I worked at Reuters, the first thing I got given was, and I came in there to sort of scope out a global SAP program for them. I got given 3 folders from Deloitte of process maps. I did read them, but then I put them on the side and had to basically create a small framework to try and digest them. And I think it's that, right? Like I'm a massive believer of like light frameworks, get your thoughts out there. Agility is not a technical concept. It's a culture and it's a way of working. It's a business concept, right? It's business agility, not technical agility. Agility, of course, particularly gets bolted to technology companies because of the hyper sort of flexible nature of them. But actually, like just recognizing that the way the world works now is incredibly fast moving and requires both business agility, and there are times you need heavier governance, right? If you're doing something for a bank, of course you need heavier governance, right? Like you're going to need to show the FCA X, Y, Z. But the reality is having the choice to pick that flavor is what I've often found very empowering.
Nice. Okay, cool. Brilliant. Okay, so we're almost there. So I've got a couple of questions just to finish off, some quick fire questions. So nothing too deep, but just want to pick your brain on things. Okay. When it comes to making, right, so the questions are, when it comes to making a difficult decision, what's your go-to way to get that decision made?
I look at things on balance. So I'm a program and project manager by trade, right? Like I tend to rag things. I look at them multidimensionally and then go, actually, how would I feel if I was on the end of that decision? So nice. Yeah.
Cool. All right. You're dealing with a difficult stakeholder. How do you make sure you communicate clearly with them?
I love telling a story. So nice. Why I'm here, what I'm trying to achieve, like what decisions do you need to make, reiterating the decisions once they're made, and then going off and telling them what the outcomes have been on the back of that.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Really get them to buy into what you're trying to do for them and bring them on. Nice. You got a tight deadline with your team. How do you make sure the team get across that line?
So first thing is making them aware of the deadline. Second thing is working with them in the trenches. The third thing is like being clear on what is a commit versus what is a stretch. And then also just being human, right? Like understanding where there's challenges and communicating them out early and often.
Nice. Cool. Okay. And then how do you celebrate those major milestones with that team?
It's about creating a sense of collective success. So everything from the beginning of like how you belong through to like the camaraderie in the team through to the reward at the end is really important. That you see.
Oh, do you know what? I like that. And I like that because you're the first person that hasn't just gone to the event. You said actually it's about getting that collective sense of achievement.
Yeah.
And so that's really interesting. That's good. I love it. Two more questions.
Yeah, sure.
Penultimate question. There you go. That's the word. What book should I read next? What's your recommendation?
Because of where I'm working at the moment, I would recommend reading The Lean Startup. Reason being, I'm working on my own startup at the moment. There's also a book that just gave me a lot of context before I entered the world of sort of product-led delivery. And I think, it's a good read. It reinforces the basics.
Nice. I'm going to stick that one on my my Christmas/birthday list. So when people say, "What can I buy you?" I have this list of books that people recommended. So it's good. I get a Russian roulette of something that someone's not suggested to me, but then something someone else that knows me selects for me. So it's quite a good filter.
No, I like that. So.
Cool. And last of all, what is your go-to habit to make sure you get home on time / shut that laptop at the right moment?
So I believe in being present with my kids. So it's probably two things, right? So one of the things is the phone goes away when I get home, so I'm always present with the kids. And the second is I tend to lock. There have been days I've been in the office at 6 or 7, but generally, unless there's an exception, I'm out of there at like 5:30. It's important to give yourself room to breathe. And as I sort of said earlier, I use the Pomodoro technique. I work in blocks, and once that block is finished, I'm on my way to see my nearest.
Nice. I love it. And then any final thoughts for any aspiring ops leaders out there that want to go on the crazy journey? What would you say to them?
Yeah, I mean, be gregarious, go out there, collaborate with people. Your career is squiggly, right? Like mine's certainly been very varied. And work at different size businesses, get some real rich experience, right? Work in different places. You'll get to know what you like, what you don't like. I've definitely been in that sector.
Cool. Awesome. And now if people want to find you, how is the best way for them to find you in the world?
Sure. So you can reach out to me. I've got my website, www.angel-advisors.com. You can also reach out to me on LinkedIn, Avneet Singh Riyat, or just pop me a message, search me on the internet. I've got a few other ways you can get in touch with social media too.
Awesome, brilliant. Thank you very much. And for anyone who's watched this, has enjoyed this is one of a series. So you can find this on YouTube along with my other interview series, 5 Habits of. So that is where we look at the habits that you need within your business to help you really flourish and be the best leader you can. If you want even more of that, you can sign up to my Productivity Prod, which is my email newsletter. It's not a newsletter, it's a productivity prod. But you have to explain it as a newsletter because otherwise people don't get it. But it's a productivity prod. So it's all the tips and tools that you need at a very personal level to make yourself super productive. That comes out once a fortnight. That is it. Thank you very much, Avneet. It's been a brilliant conversation. Thank you.
Cheers, Michael.